Welcome to Brampton Focus. In 2015, the federal political landscape changed in Peel from conservative blue to liberal red. There were campaign promises to be kept, a first budget, government spending, and of course with spending, you get debt. One of the key portfolios to generate revenue, push innovation, stimulate the economy, and pay for the promises is economic development. My name is Michael A. Charbon. Next, I sit down with the Liberal Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development, Minister of Parliament Navdeep Bains. That's next, right here on Brampton Focus. Welcome back to Brampton Focus. My next guest was born in Toronto. He went to Turner Fenton Secondary School right here in Brampton. He attended York University and then went to the University of Windsor to earn his master's degree in business administration. Then in 2004, at the tender age of 26, he was elected to the 38th Canadian Parliament. He was representing Mississauga, Brampton South. He was actually the youngest Liberal who was in the Parliament at the time. He served under Paul Martin. So he was elected in 2004, elected in 2006 and 2008. Tough elections because it was the Harper government. Conservatives were in power and he was part of the opposition. And in 2011, well, the big blue machine was taking over and Eve Adams defeated my next guest. So what did he do? Went to teach, went to lecture, reconnected with his peeps, as one would say, and resurfaced in 2015 under the 23rd Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, and was elected in 2015 back as a Liberal. He is the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development under the Justin Trudeau government. He's the MP for Mississauga Malton, and his name is Navdeep Bains. Mr. Bains, thank you so much for joining.
Well, thank you very much, Michael, for having me on.
You know, some people have called you the Minister of Mr. Everything or the Minister of Everything, and they take a reference, very complimentary, comparing you to C.D. Howe, the Canadian politician who from 37 to 47 under Mackenzie King and Laurier was the guy who was instrumental, as they say, of taking Canada from an agricultural economy to an industrial economy. You have been touted as being the man who's trying to do the same thing. What do you feel about people who are saying that about you as the Minister of Economic Development?
Well, I think for me, it's very humbling. As you mentioned, I was born in Toronto, grew up here in Brampton, and now to have the honor and privilege of representing Mississauga Malton and being in cabinet, it's a big, big honor. It's a big deal. But my objectives are very similar to previous industry ministers, which is really around economic growth and good quality jobs. And I'm really focused on that agenda, but it is very humbling.
It's very cool, actually. One of the things that was one of the first elements that you put into action when you were elected was reinstating the census. Under the Harper government, they eliminated the census. Well, the educational elite, as some would call them, said, you can't do that. We have to know who we are, where we're going, where we've been, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. The Liberal government spent about $10 million in getting the census, and as a result, you got the highest returns, 98%. Yeah. So what did you learn? That was your initiative. What did you learn? What can you share with us?
So it was a big deal on day one when I became minister and I was appointed the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development. I had the good fortune of making the first government announcement, which was reinstating the mandatory long-form census. Yeah. And it fundamentally boils down to our government's commitment to good quality data. We want to make sure we have good quality data that benefits communities, businesses, and ultimately our citizens. Right. And we've seen that reflected with a 98% response rate, the highest in census history, which is a point of pride.
Since I think it was 1666.
That's
there
right.
you go. Were you reading my research very much?
So it's very special, the response rate. What that fundamentally just means is that we have good quality data now. Yeah. We have good sample size, and based on that data.
So what did you learn, Navdeep? What was? Is there one thing that comes up? I mean, I get that we have to do it. I think it was foolish not to consider because we have to know who and where we are. But what is there one thing that you can glean from that exercise that is a very poignant opinion of what's going to assist you, steering you forward?
So one thing that we learned is that especially in our rural and remote communities or high growth communities like the region of Peel or Brampton or Mississauga, we we need that good quality data to make sure we get our fair share here, to make sure that we have data for proper urban planning and suburban planning, to make sure that community services are better deployed for our citizens. So that's the real desired outcome from it. You know, most recently, the stats came out. We're a country of just over 35 million people, and the growth rate here in the region of Peel has been phenomenal. We're close to 1.5 million, and Mississauga is now 761,000. So it really speaks to the growth in this region, and we want to make sure we use that data now to provide better opportunities for our citizens.
So going on the data element, you were instrumental in instituting a $500 million investment to bring internet and high-speed internet connectivity to rural locations, because you felt that it was going to be important. You have a three-point plan, and it actually is based on, one is people, to be able to educate people so they can, you know, function in this new world. Second was technology, to rejuvenate our technology situation, and to be able to bring emerging technology. And finally, the third one was in investing in small business and getting small businesses to be more, how should you say, active and flourishing. We still have a bit of a disconnect. We're still not seeing the uptick that's necessary. There are people who are still struggling paycheck to paycheck.
Correct.
What do you see as a solution to try and expedite this, to move? I mean, the internet thing is important, connectivity and information.
Yeah, but fundamentally it's about creating an innovative economy. We really believe if you want to have long-term growth, if you want to create good quality jobs, you really need to focus on innovation. And what innovation fundamentally is about is better communities, a better quality of life, better jobs, better opportunities. So innovation is doing things better. So people think innovation is the latest gadget or latest technology. No. Innovation is a small business making an improvement to, you know, produce their product more efficiently, or a small service business just being better, more, you know, better solution again to provide better service to their customers. So innovation is really something that small businesses do really well and large businesses do well. And it's all about our ability to compete. And if we can compete well, we can grow, and if we grow, we create good quality jobs. And that's what the three-point plan is about. We invest in people, and so it's all about lifelong learning, because we're now part of a digital economy. So we want to make sure people have the skills, the education, the retraining, you know, initiatives like coding from a very young age for young people to work integrated learning.
The world is moving now, Minister Bains, where automation is going to take over. We are going to be replaced by robots. I mean, everybody's going, what? It's true. Robots don't go on strike. The automation of general labor and low-skilled labor jobs is the advent of the next. Yeah. Is it not something we want to steer our people into? Hydraulics, technology, mechanicalism, solar power, those elements, because that is the burgeoning future that we're going to face.
Absolutely. So we're making a big play on clean technology. This is our government's commitment to say, look, the environment and the economy go hand in hand. And to your earlier point, it's really about adopting technology. If you look at Germany, Japan, or South Korea, highly robotic, highly automated, and low levels of unemployment rate. So we really want to embrace technology. We want to be at the forefront of new ideas. We don't want to compete as the lowest cost jurisdiction. It's not about low quality jobs. It's about good quality jobs, and that's the focus of our government.
Good quality jobs, that rings true of what was being said during the election, and it rings true to what people want to hear. When we come back, now we're going to talk a little bit about budget, because the dollar always stops when you talk about those kitchen table talks. Navdeep Bains is one of those guys. He's a minister, and he's from Mississauga, Malton region. That's who he's representing. My name's Michael A. Charbon. When we come back to Brampton Focus, we'll talk about the budget. Back after this. Welcome back to Brampton Focus, joined by Mr. Navdeep Bains, who, I love this title. I mean, he was elected to Parliament 4 times, he's served under 3 prime ministers, he's sworn to the Privy Council. That's very important if you really understand what the Privy Council is. And in 2016, announced a mandatory return to the long-form census and did us all a favor to find out who we are and where we are. Rumor has it, Minister Bains, that there's been a quote that's gone out to do some printing. And you know what that signals? That's the budget. Did you know that the budget, what interest that? And of course, far be it for me to ask you if you knew when the budget is coming out. But I mean, there has been a quote for printing. And there was an interesting fact I just wanted to share with our folks at home. The printing of the budget goes into a 27 to 31 hour lockdown, sequester. So from the time that the budget data is delivered to the printer, and it has to be within 100 miles of Ottawa, is delivered there, from the printing to the sorting to the dock area to the delivery of it, everybody's under sequester. You can't go anywhere, you can't take anything, you can't talk to anybody, they take your phones away. And then they produce the budget. Interestingly enough, budget on average is about 430 pages. They produce 3,500 English versions and 1,900 French versions. The budget. The budget. Now, when we talk about budget, I'm sorry to say we're in a bit of a problem in Canada. We were under the impression when the Liberals got elected that there was going to be something of the tone of $17 billion of a deficit. We've been told now that it's going to be twice as much, as I'm futzing for my page. It's going to be twice as much, and it's a bit of a problem. We look at the national debt, this is what I want to get to, $649 billion, that's B with a billion, in 2016-17, and estimated at $718 billion by 2019. You're a fiscal guy.
Yep.
You worked for Nike, you worked for Ford, you got a master's in business, you're business and economic development. Would you run your company that way? Well, I mean, there's people at home who are saying, look at what we're paying every month to service the debt.
It's a great point. I mean, if you look at companies that are growing, if you look at businesses that are growing, they go out there and they take loans. They take on debt because they want to grow and they want to expand. So it's not completely uncommon from a business perspective to leverage, to be able to grow, to make investments. So I think that concept isn't foreign. I think we still need to demonstrate that we're very respectful of taxpayers' money. We need to be prudent, and we need to be very thoughtful and deliberate of where we deploy those funds, and are we getting the best rate of return. I think that's what people expect from us.
But Liberals traditionally have always been the givers.
Well, look at the math. No. Look at the math. You did the math there, right?
Yes, sir.
Now look at under which prime ministers accumulated the most debt.
Yeah. Well, okay. We can look. I mean, you can.
$150 million into Mr. Harper.
I am not in any way saying that the Conservatives are whitewashed from this. Not whatsoever.
So it's not a partisan issue, is my point.
No, I'm not trying to make it a partisan issue. What I'm trying to say, in some instances, people would say Liberals are more attuned to giving money and being more benevolent, as one would say, and spurring, while Conservatives are being characterized as being more cautious.
So that's the brand. So I agree with you. That's kind of what I would say the brands represent.
When I'm looking at $718 billion.
But if you look at that since the debt has been accumulated, and look at the different leadership, if you look at Mr. Maroney and Mr. Harper as an example, they've accumulated close to 40% of our national debt. But the point here is not the debt in itself, which is very important, but how is our economy growing? If you look at our debt to GDP, we're roughly around 30%, which compared to our G7 countries puts us in a relatively strong position.
We have a workforce of 19 million people.
That's right.
We have an inflation of about 1%.
Yeah, it's incredibly low. We've done really well with them. So we've got very strong monetary policy.
But can you imagine if we got rid of our debt? Yeah. Can you imagine if we really became more fiscally responsible? I mean, we're already looked at as having the best banks.
But we have other debts too. We have a deficit in debts and infrastructure, right? That's a big deal. And that's what we ran on. We said, look, to grow the economy, to create productivity, to improve our fiscal situation, we need to make investments. And that's what we ran on the campaign. We said we're going to commit to $160 billion. We increased that to $180 billion. And that's the path that we're pursuing. We're making these investments, and we believe the return will come forward in terms of the jobs that it creates in the short term, and its ability to put us in a competitive position.
You see, there are people in this country that say, I mean, and in Ontario and specifically, when we look at the amount of money that's being spent to service the debt, it's a difference between renting and owning a house. Yeah. Right? There has to be a moment when we say, and it's always the people who get their stuff cut that they're complaining, when do we say enough is enough? We really have to reel this in.
No, I agree. Fiscal prudence is very important, but we're also very fortunate that interest rates are low. So this is the time to make the investment in infrastructure, and that's what we ran on. We said, look, interest rates are low. Now is the time to make the investment, as opposed to when they're 2 or 3 times higher. And that's the path we ran on. So I agree with your concern. I share those concerns as well. But we had to make a decision in order to grow the economy. If you look at the previous government, they invested $150 billion of debt. They accumulated $150 billion of debt, and we had the lowest economic growth in decades. What we're saying is, in order to grow, we want to be more strategic, and rather than focusing on recreational projects or community projects, let's focus more on strategic investments. The Connect to Innovate example, about
Yes.
broadband connectivity, for
Yes.
example, I really believe that we'll get a good return on investment.
I agree with you. So I'm gonna switch here. Let's talk about Bombardier.
Yep.
Okay, in 2015, it was $5.3 billion of net loss.
Yeah.
Last year was a great year. It was only $981 million. Now, you in the House of Commons, and I've read many of your statements. One gentleman from Quebec was assailing your work ethic, and you said, dude, it was like $350 million by the Harper government was spent in Bombardier. But some would say, with about 2 minutes left, some would say, when does a government start picking winners? When do you decide that $5 billion in debt one year and almost $1 billion in debt the next year is when do you fish or cut bait, as the East Coasters would say?
Well, this is a very important sector, the aerospace sector. This was an investment to the sector and to the jobs. So this sector employs 211,000 people.
But 14,000 jobs were just cut.
Correct, but there's a boom and bust to it, right? So there's new product lines being introduced.
But
So
wait a second, how much, if you took every single one of those people, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No worries.
If you take every single one of those 211,000 people and you split the $5 billion or the $6 billion, if you want to make it a round thing, it would be cheaper just to pay all these people money and hope that they spend to spur the economy.
Yeah. No, so first of all, that's the economic loss that the company faced. That's a one-year economic hit to the company. That's not to the economy. The overall economic benefit of the aerospace sector to the economy is $28 billion. You know, other countries...
Per year, that's correct.
That's right. So other countries would love to be in that envious position of having this kind of vibrant aerospace sector. So the investment, what we made, was on research and development. How do we develop new product line, the Global 7000, and making sure we continue to do well with the C-Series. These two investments will secure 4,000 top-notch, good quality positions. When I talk about good quality, on average, they pay 60% more than the average manufacturing job. So these are good quality jobs.
These are intelligent.
And that's what the investment was about. It was really about, it was giving the company a loan, $372.5 million over the next 4 years to invest in research and development.
Are Canadians going to see this return?
Absolutely. They have a track record of paying back all their loans in the past, so I'm confident going forward that will continue. And what we got in return was, again, securing 4,000 jobs and creating an additional 1,300 jobs.
Navdeep Bains, he is the Minister of Science and Economic Development under Justin Trudeau. When we come back in our final segment, number 3, we're going to look ahead. I mean, I've been a little bit of a bad person because I've talked about budgets and deficits. Let's look ahead. This gentleman has a lot of forward-thinking aspects, and he is a leader. And we want to get a little bit out of him of what's coming up as we continue in 2017. My name is Michael A. Charbon. You're watching Brampton Focus. Come back for our final segment with Navdeep Bains right after this. Welcome back to Brampton Focus. Joined by Navdeep Bains. He is a Minister of Parliament. He is Innovation, Science, Economic Development. These are big titles. Basically, Mr. Moneybags, as some people would say. But he's investing in Canada. This being our final segment, I wanted to talk a little bit about transit. The government has stated, the government of Canada stated they're going to invest $3.4 billion in transit over the next 3 years. Ontario receiving some $1.5 billion of new funding. As of late, the city of Brampton, the council, committed $4.4 million to study alternative routes for the LRT, which they postponed, didn't want to connect to Brampton, and instead of going straight up Main Street, they've got all these little, basically the $4.4 million to study is going to take 10 years plus. So here you are in Mississauga Malton. You are the man who's in charge of at least motioning where some of this money is going to go. You have nothing shovel ready in Brampton.
Yeah, and so
the LRT. What does that make you feel?
Well, that's the challenge, and I think that's what we're seeing municipally as well. That's right, and you know, I mean, ultimately they'll hopefully sort that out. I hope sooner rather than later. But what we want to demonstrate is our commitment to infrastructure. Yeah. We made a 10-year commitment. $180 billion that we reinforced in our last fall economic update. And like you said, 1/3 of that in phase one, $3.4 billion, will go to public transit. And most recently, we just made an announcement a few days ago for $32.4 million for Brampton, really upgrading the buses, upgrading the maintenance facility. That's right. So we're really
parking. I mean,
that's right. So that's phase one, and there's phase two. But the point is, we're here in the long term. We want to invest. We want to deploy federal funding to public transit. We think it's absolutely critical, especially for regions that are growing like Brampton.
Well, Brampton just got a university. We've got a care clinic, a quasi-hospital, if you could say, a walk-in clinic. We've got all these things that need, and no disrespect, but I mean, it's not an emergency room. It's not. We need transit to facilitate people to be able to get to those locations.
That's right.
And now we've got someone who represents this region, who wants to help infrastructure, and Brampton doesn't have anything to plug into.
Yeah, so the bottom line is we're willing to be a partner. We have the funds available, and really we're willing to work with the province and municipality, and we're hoping that they come up with a solution.
Yeah. So let's use a crystal ball and look ahead. Your portfolio is vast. You have the ability to spur technological development to put Canada first. You were recently in Las Vegas at the CES show. Yep. Very good words coming back, representing Canada and our new business. What would you say to the folks out there that are saying, you seem to be spending a lot of money with your government? What can we look forward to as tangible results to that person who's got that 9-to-5 job is saying, you know what, I need to make more money. My car insurance is expensive. I want to put my kids in hockey, or I want to play lacrosse. What can you give them as a glimmer of hope?
Jobs. Jobs, jobs. That is our primary focus. That's what we ran on. That's what we're committed to doing. You know, since we formed government, there's been 286,000 jobs that have been created. The challenge is, though, 286,000 jobs across the country that have been created. The challenge is, though, there's a good chunk of part-time jobs. How do we secure full-time, high-quality jobs? And that's really going to be the focus of our government. That's why we're making investments in research and development. That's where, like we said, we're focused on people. So it's really about lifelong learning and really empowering our people and training and retraining. It's about technology adoption so we can be more productive, more innovative. It's about helping companies grow and scale up, right? So that's really our objective, and that's what we're going to remain focused on. It's really about an innovative economy. We do not want to compete to be the lowest cost jurisdiction. We want to be a
That's a losing game.
Yeah, we want to be a jurisdiction.
You need to be a leader.
That's right, where if you have good ideas, you want smart solutions, you come to Canada. And that's what I've been doing. We've been focusing a lot on those investments.
So 2.5 minutes left. As of late, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau went and met Donald Trump, and it's been the land of Trump, as one would say. He's throwing TPP out. He wants to renegotiate NAFTA. There's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of insular nationalism. When the Prime Minister came back, obviously you're a trusted, not consultant, you're a trusted partner in the moving forward of the government representing us. What did Prime Minister Trudeau say as to what we have to look forward to or be afraid of dealing with the United States and the Trump organization?
So I think at this stage it's all about tone and setting a good relationship, and we've accomplished that. But there's a lot more work to be done. It's really about, again, highlighting to Americans the importance of an integrated economy. There's 35 states in the United States. The number one customer, Canada. The top 13.
Well, they're our biggest importer and they're our biggest customer. I think it's 75% of our exports go to the U.S. and 63% comes back to us.
9 million U.S. jobs rely on the Canadian economy, right? $2 billion worth of goods cross the border each and every single day.
Well, when we see companies, just as of late, Bacardi's, closing down and going to the Florida area, that's that nationalistic element. There are many subsidiary companies that have been able to utilize Canadian workforce and the goodness that we have in Canada to supply their companies.
But what's our value proposition? Our value proposition is really our people.
But are more companies going to close? Do we have?
I feel that we have a very strong case to make, right? We made significant investments in our universities and colleges, $2 billion. We made significant investments in training and retraining. We're focusing a lot on research and development. Most recently, Thomson and Reuters brought in 1,500 people. GM Canada hired 1,000 new engineers, right? Mirabel, again, 1,000 new employees. Bombardier, we talked about. So these are just some examples of investments being made in Canada, companies coming to Canada, and we're going to continue to focus on that. That's why if you notice, the Prime Minister was in Europe talking
Yes.
about free
Well,
trade and
the
saying, look,
G20, yeah,
that's
I mean,
right.
that
So
was-
look, that's clearly said this is a market of 500 million people now that our companies can go and
But
trade.
we have a great perspective, right? I mean, you look at our one of our former ministers running all the banks in England. I mean,
right.
so we are looked at as being fiscally responsible.
Correct.
With just a minute left, is there one thing, I always try to get this from the politicians, is there that shining little pebble that we can say, okay, we're going to get to that? Is there one objective that you want to get to?
Well, for me, it's really about living the Canadian dream. My father came here in the early 70s, literally a few dollars in his pocket.
Yep.
And he worked really hard.
Mine
and
too,
he was
from Switzerland, 20 bucks in his pocket.
That's
True.
right. And he worked really hard, had a successful career. And I have the same hopes and aspiration for my girls now. I want to work hard so they have a bright future. And so if there's one legacy we can leave, is are we going to leave our economy and our society better off for future generations? And that's going to be our priority.
Navdeep Bains from Mississauga, Malton. Navdeep, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I hope that we'll have the opportunity to see you again and possibly talk to Prime Minister Trudeau. There's a lot of people in Brampton who supported and made a difference when he started.
They did.
My name's Michael A. Charbon. You've been watching Brampton Focus. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.